Okay, so here is our latest prediction for the fulfillment of the fire signs of 1 Kings 18, the second and the third fire sign. They're going to occur on Chislev 4 to 6, 2022, which is December the 1st to the 4th, and on Chislev 20 to 22, 2022, which is December the 17th to the 20th this year. And Chislev 5 is the fifth Zoa Pentecost, and Chislev 21 is the 2NC Pentecost, counting from Heshvan 2, which is first fruits of the new Heshvan 1 secular year, which year is occasioned in honour of Jesus becoming Caesar to Abraham on Heshvan 5, which is the fourth Zoa Pentecost. He becomes Caesar to Isaac on Chislev 5 when the second fire sign occurs. So to prove that, first of all we have the Lord's Witness Exodenic times. Now every true church that there's ever been screws up, because we're humans, and when you screw up, depending on how bad the screw up is, you can become a false church, or you can just get maledictions, or you can have both. And the Lord's Witnesses are no exception. The only good thing about this church is we did screw up, but not so as to become a false church. We screwed up so as to get maledictions, and we were cut in half. It's the parable of Luke 13, the faithful steward. We were cut in half. We were appointed to feed the first New Covenant saints, but we were never appointed to rule over them, because I screwed up and decided to go and compete with Bill Gates with a company called Hyperos Systems, rather than compete with Satan for a company called God Incorporated, which was seeking my own battles rather than God's. And I was hired by God. I should have done God's stuff. I did not get ready to do what he wanted. Instead, I imagined I could serve both God and Mammon, or some kind of, it wasn't so much Mammon, didn't make much money out of Hyperos. It was I wanted to liberate mankind from the oppression of Windows, but I failed. And in doing that, all I did was imprison this church and divide it. So the penalty was that we lost our rulership over the first New Covenant saints, but we did not lose our rulership over the second New Covenant saints, because we were appointed to rule over them. We passed the 3.5-year test to rule over them before I started messing around with Hyperos. So what should have happened is that we should have cooperated. What God did is he formed a sect within the Watchtower who actually stole our baptism and who spied on our understandings and who never communicated with us other than on a couple of occasions when they came to see us in the early 2000s. Although they didn't declare that they were Laodiceans, they just came to see us saying, one guy said, the governing body doesn't understand your website. Can you please make some videos? Which I did. And then they never spoke to me again. And another guy came over and said that you nearly overturned the entire Watchtower. They don't understand anything, and they know they don't understand anything. You have a much better understanding than them. If you'd pushed it harder, you would have overturned the whole church. And I said I didn't think that was my job, to overturn the church. I just was presenting a sacrifice for God's priesthood to accept or reject. I don't know whether I did the right thing or the wrong thing. I probably did the wrong thing. Anyway, so this group inside the Watchtower, a hidden church, a church of the night, was formed. It's Laodicea, the seventh church of Revelation. It's how we were cut in two. And what should have happened is we should have remained friends, because we were sister churches. We should have communicated, and they should have sent all their 2 NCs to me, and I should have sent all my 1 NCs to them, and that would have been the way God would want it to have run. But they didn't do that. They played a power game, and they pretended I didn't exist while spying on me the whole time, and they just regarded me as a threat to their power. They didn't understand that the real threat to their power was never me. It was God. I don't have any power. It's God who has the power. So what happened was, we both got these maledictions, and maledictions always last for 7 times, which can be months, can be years, or can be years of years. In other words, 2,520 years, 7 years or 7 months. They can even be 7 days. I mean, Miriam was chucked out of the camp for 7 days when God spat at her face and gave her leprosy for trying to usurp the power of Moses. And that is a light penalty from God for that sort of behaviour, because he must have loved her. He loves all of us. So, in the case of Laodicea, they became non-Adamic 2012, Abrahamic, and they then had a 7-year malediction to 2019. And then they were reappointed as a true church in 2019, having fallen in 2017 on Elul the 10th. They were reappointed on April 7th, 2019, and they were the collection vehicle for the 1NC reserves. The reserves are the tribe of people. Jesus made the last covenant, Luke 22, and he said, you know, here's a covenant for you to sit on 12 thrones judging the 12 tribes of Israel. The greater tribe, not the ones genetically from Jacob through his 12 sons, but the ones by baptism from John the Baptist through the 12 apostles. What happened genetically with the Jews happened by baptism lineage with the Christians, because Christianity is advanced Judaism, and it's the fulfillment. Jesus didn't come to end the law, to destroy the law, sorry. He did end the law in its application to Christians directly, but he came to fulfill it. And Paul said that the law has a shadow of the things to come. And everything that the Jews do, even their language, their festivals, everything that they do is a prophecy. They are a nation of prophets. That the entire Hebrew language, in its daft ambiguity and symbolic nature, is how the Bible is written. Likewise, even with the Greek language, even the Greeks are prophets, because their language is a language of the Bible. For instance, the word for beach means place of rushing or sandy beach. And the reason for that is in the symbolism of John 21. Jesus is standing on the beach, and in one of the meanings he's standing on the sand. The land is the congregation, the sea is people not in the congregation, and the beach is the people who adhere to the congregation but aren't in it. So they've got faith in that church, but they're rather like Winston Churchill said, they're the buttresses of the church rather than the pillars of the church. They support it from the outside. There's plenty of people like that, but not from the inside. So that's the sand of the sea, such as are the seed of Abraham, says Genesis. That's one meaning of the word for beach. But the other meaning is place of rushing, because the sea, rushes in onto the beach and then rushes back out again. And the last church, Zoa, is a place of rushing. So it also means that. So the two possible meanings of the word in the Greek language are both used in the Bible. So I suppose you could say God is so clever that he could use any language like that. But the problem is that God invented all the languages. Therefore, he designed Greek and Hebrew for the express purpose that he wished to use it in the Bible. Because don't forget, God is outside time. So it makes no difference to him what time anything occurred. To him it's all one thing. So he can, create a language 3,000 years, in the days of Babel, around 2,000 years before Christ. And he can have a Bible written by Moses 500 years later, or by John 2,000 years later, in these languages which he created 2,000 or 500 years before. But then these languages happen to have all the right meanings that God needs for his scriptures. So I guess that's because sometimes I get really frustrated with the daft ambiguity of Hebrew, but that was designed deliberately so that the Bible could have the meanings that it today has. And anyone who speaks it is therefore a prophet, because he's teaching ambiguity, he's teaching scriptural greater meaning ambiguity. He doesn't know he's doing that, but what prophet ever knew what he was talking about? None of them ever did. You have to have it. One is the prophet, the other is the interpreter of his prophecy. So they, after 7 years, started saving the first New Covenant reserves. As I said, there are 12 tribes, and the reserve tribe is the tribe of... there's 12,000 in each tribe, according to Revelation, making 144,000. in that covenant. That's 144,000 kings, which means there will be 144,000 kingdoms in the kingdom of God, rather than the 200 or so on this world. And that'll be wonderful, because it means there won't be some banana in control of 100 million people. And nobody will have control of more than about 100,000 people. And I mean, there's enough problem, believe me, controlling 10,000 people, let alone 100,000. And the idea that one man can have any proper control and any relationship with 100 million people is completely ridiculous. God rules everything by a family method, where you're supposed to know and personally interact with your subjects, not send out some kind of a law which you don't explain to anybody and you put on a website and you expect everybody in your kingdom, all 100 million of them, to obey, without having properly consulted any of them or having any proper interaction with 99.999% of them. That is not the way to run anything. Small is beautiful, and that's how the kingdom of God works. So there's 12,000 times 12, which is 144,000 kingdoms, and there's 144,000 kings. And the apostles sit on 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of these 12,000 kings. And then the kings judge their people. And what will happen is some of these kings will screw up and get thrown out, or suspended temporarily. And some will abdicate and say, I don't want to be a king. You know, I want to write music, I want to write plays, I want to invent very fast flying machines, I want to, you know, become a star tennis player, I want to do medical research, I want to write Shakespearean plays, I want to, whatever it might be. They don't all want to be kings. God has picked them because they'll be good at being kings and they have some desire to do it. But God doesn't force people to do things they don't want to do, although he does force them not to do things that he doesn't think they should be doing. He forces you not to do things you shouldn't do, even if you do want to do them, but he doesn't normally force you to do something you don't want to do. Anyway, some people are going to not want to play this game, and they will be replaced by the reserves. And we've got one reserve for each 12 kings. So the attrition rate over in the entire thing, and God wouldn't make a reserve that wasn't needed. I very much doubt he would anyway, because he can see the whole future. So it seems that 1 in 12 of the kings will at some point in the 1,000-year kingdom either be removed for abuse of power or something else, or he will determine himself that he's had enough and resign for whatever reason, which is fine, but that's the reserves. And they were saved in reappointed Laodicea from 2019 actually until 2020 Sivan 14, which was the 7th 1NC marriage. There are 7 marriages Jesus has. And then after Laodicea there was, and so let's look at the whole history. I just want to make the point that there's 7-year malediction after the Laodiceans became non-Adamic, Abrahamic, to when the saints in that church got saved. Likewise with this church. We became Abrahamic in 2012 on Sivan 14 to 16. Died to Adam, resurrected to Abraham on Zoa first fruits, Sivan 16. But then we became Isaac from 2015, Tammuz 14 to Tammuz 16. 3 years, 1 month later, we became Isaac. So that's when we reached our promised land. That's the end of our restoration in this system. So that's when our malediction hits, because a malediction is the removal of a blessing which you've got. So you have to get the blessing before you can be maledicted out of it. So we didn't get our final non-Adamic blessing until 2015, whereas the Laodiceans did. The Laodiceans did not become Isaac. The 3 EC baptism, which they had in reappointed Laodicea, courtesy of a descended Charles Russell, who was the head of the Watchtower, but was resurrected and then came back to them. There's a secret nobody's told anybody. I don't even know whether they know it. Anyway, we shall find that out soon. That baptism does not make you Isaac, but the 4 EC does. It's a different power of the 4th Elijah to the 3rd Elijah. So our church had this extra non-Adamic state. I mean, the reason you have all these stages is you first of all have faith and you become a son of Abraham. Then if you become a priest, you become a son of Isaac. And if you become a saint, you become a son of Jacob, the 3 patriarchs representing the 3 types of jobs in the kingdom, you know, king, priest or citizen. And when you become non-Adamic, you just work your way up the covenant, starting at the bottom one, Abraham, then becoming Isaac. Eventually, from a human standpoint, I mean, Jacobean is angelic, but from a human standpoint, you'll eventually become Methuselahan, which is that is an indefinitely lasting, non-aging human body. You don't get that in this system. Zoa, this church, is a halfway house. So you become non-Adamic, but you don't cease aging, you actually age at half rate. So although I'm 65, my genetic age is 60 actually, because I've been non-Adamic, Abrahamic or Isaac for 10 years. And during that time I've aged at half rate. So although you wouldn't know, I mean, it depends how much stress you've got, doesn't it? I mean, poor old Barack Obama, when he took over the presidency, he had black hair, and when he finished it, his hair was white. I think that kind of stress ages you at double speed. So if you're non-Adamic, you age at half speed, but then it depends how much stress you're under. Anyway, so our malediction started in 2015 on Thames, the 15th in the case of our exodenic times. Exodenic times go from cakes, first day of cakes, first day of cakes. Exodenic times is a malediction where you're denied the promised land. Gentile times you're denied a Caesar who represents God, and alienation times is you're denied some aspects of the priesthood. You're actually denied being sealed by the Holy Spirit, and you're denied the gifts of the Holy Spirit, I believe. Not really sure about the alienation times. I find that difficult. Exodenic is easy. So what that means is nobody got the benefit of our Isaic baptism. On Tammuz the 14th, this whole church became Isaic, but everybody we baptised after that date, for 7 years, from the 15th to 2022, Tammuz 15, they didn't become Isaic, they remained Abrahamic. But after 2015, they can become Isaic if you baptise them. Now, what happened to the ones we baptised to be Abrahamic? I don't think they've yet become Isaic. I'm not sure when they do. I don't quite know how that works, but they got an Abrahamic baptism. Whether it automatically becomes Isaic at the end of the malediction, I don't know. But that's the exodenic times. Sorry, but the malediction that I want to talk to you about is the Gentile, the LW, no it isn't, it's the alienation times, that's right. Because in 1 Kings 18 is a story of an alienation times malediction. Because Elijah says to his attendant, go back for 7 times, which is a malediction length. He's looking for a cloud, he doesn't see it, go back 7 times, and then he does see it. And the dust got licked up, which is a euphemism for Pentecost, where there were tongues of fire. And the whole account, all the prophets, numbers of prophets, are multiples of 50. The whole count is enumerated or denominated in 50s. There's 100 prophets of Jehovah hidden 50s in a cave. There's 400 prophets of Jezebel, the sacred pole. There's 450 prophets of Baal. Everything's divisible by 50. So it's a Pentecostal account, and the malediction which begins and ends on a Pentecost and lasts 7 times is the alienation times. And that runs from when we get appointed as sacred king or priest over the 2 NCs in 2015, which was actually the second 2NC Pentecost on Chislev 21, when we were installed, Chislev 21. 7 years later is Chislev 21 2021, which is the end of the alienation times and is the 3rd fire sign. Both fire signs occur at Pentecost because 1 Kings 18 is Pentecostal. So there is a very long route, sorry about going off on tangents, to understand the first proof why the 3rd fire sign occurs at, well, it definitely occurs at the end of the LW alienation times. It's a question of when is that, and it would definitely be Chislev 21 because it's the second installation over the 2 NCs. We were first of all appointed over them and installed on 2000 Tishri 2 Heshvan 21, which is the regular 2 NC first fruits and Pentecost. We were not ever appointed over them during our Abrahamic phase, non-Adamic Abrahamic phase from 2012 to 2015, because Abraham left the 2 men when he went off with Isaac to sacrifice him. You know, when the ram got caught in the thicket and he was going to sacrifice him but didn't because God stopped him. Isaac was willing to be so sacrificed. He trusted his father, and his father trusted God, who reasoned that God has control of life, therefore he has the right. And let me say this, I may be wrong, but let me say this about that account. It's very important. I'll never forget when my ex-girlfriend said to me once, "So if God commanded you to sacrifice me, would you do it?" And I said yes, which was the wrong thing to say. It might seem obvious to somebody who's not. That's what I said. That was the wrong answer. I mean, it was the wrong answer for our relationship, but to her credit, she didn't hold that against me, really. What I should have said is, I won't do it if you don't want me to. And further than that, I should have said, furthermore, I won't do it if it defiles my conscience. You see, if God himself, and you know it's God, comes to see you and says, I'm God, I'm Jehovah, sign, miracle, miracle. What I'd like you to do is machine gun everybody whose name begins with J, because they compete with me and I don't like it. If he did that, you shouldn't do it, because your conscience, in my opinion, is above God. Because if not, you're an idolater of God, which sounds crazy, but I've come to that conclusion. You should be an idolater not of your priesthood and not of God. You should be a worshipper of God. A worshipper of God is somebody who seeks to understand God's morality and applies it after he's understood it. If you just apply it because you're told, you're a nursery school kid. If you do what God tells you, you're useless to him. You have to do what God tells you because you understand why he's telling you it. I mean, sometimes there's a bit of faith in there too. Okay, if you're not sure but it doesn't defile your conscience, you can do it. If he says, I want you to kiss everybody whose name begins with J, fine. It doesn't defile your conscience, you can do it. But if he says, I want to kill everybody whose name begins with J, you shouldn't do it because it will defile your conscience. So he's trying to create grown-ups, not kids. So it is possible. It's a very deep thing, but it is possible. Certainly you can be an idolater of a priesthood, but you can actually be an idolater of God if you do what he says just because he says it. In circumstances where you know with your biblical... let me put it like this. If you feel it's wrong, that's a bit different. And I still don't think you should do it personally. But if you know from your biblically trained conscience that it's wrong. For instance, when God said to Moses, let me kill the whole nation of Israel in an instant and make you into the nation. And Moses says, you can't do that. Everybody will say, you killed them all because you couldn't deliver them. What would you do that for? Destroy your own reputation. So he didn't go ahead and immediately do what God said. He didn't do that. He said, that's a daft idea, I'm not going to do it. Don't do it. He told him, don't do it, actually. He said, don't do it. It's a really bad idea. And that's because Moses was a grown-up. He didn't say, great idea, God. You're always right. Kill everybody in Israel and I will be the father of the next true Israel. He didn't say that because he had a conscience. And so I hope that I've grown up a bit since I gave the wrong response. That's a brilliant thing about women. They find all your weak points and they absolutely hammer you on them. And I've got plenty of weak points. Alright, so that's the first proof. The second proof is the one that convinced me, actually, which is this. There's a wonderful principle in the Bible, code, called the immediate, well we call it, the immediate number repetition principle. And what it says is this. We have found it to be true. If a number of items in an account is immediately repeated, then in the greater meaning, that number stands for units of time which are accurate to the day, which are therefore, they must be therefore either months or years. Can't be days, because days are always accurate to the day. So for example, it says in 1 Kings 18 that Elijah built an altar. He took 12 stones according to the number of the tribes of the sons of Israel, and he built them into an altar. Now the number of the tribes of the sons of Israel is 12. So what did he do? He took 12 stones according to the number 12 of stones, and he built them into an altar. So the Bible is saying he took 12, even 12 stones, and that's an immediate number repetition. And that means it took him 12 months or 12 years to do that. Now the competition has already taken more than 12 months, and it in fact stands for 12 years. What it actually says is he first of all said to all the people, approach me. Then he built this 12-stone altar, and when he built the altar, it was accepted by God. Now, I effectively said approach me, and people actually paid some attention to me, when there was a fire on Mount Carmel in Israel on 2010, Chislev 20 to 23. There was the biggest fire in modern Israel's history. It killed 24 people, created a big old cloud of smoke right by the sea at Mount Carmel. It fulfilled 1 Kings 18 very literally, because Elijah himself was on Mount Carmel when he bent down, did a mushroom cloud, and told his attendant to go look for something rising from the sea. And there was something rising from the sea on 2010, Chislev 21. It was a mushroom cloud as a result of the greatest fire in modern Israel's history. And I predicted the date of that fire, but I thought it would be a bomb in New York or a bomb in east of London. It wasn't. So I didn't make a correct prediction as regards the geographical location. I did actually get the right time, but I don't claim it as a correct prediction. But it was nonetheless the first fire sign of 1 Kings 18. It made the contest more relevant. It meant that people did pay attention to me, some of the contest watchers, and they approached me, and they probably watched what I was doing a bit more carefully for a while thereafter, until they gave up when I kept on getting it wrong. So it's the time starting from the first fire sign, and you count 12 years from then, and you get to 2022, Chislev 20 to 23. But actually the fire sign was recognised by Ian as a fire sign on Chislev 22, the Sabbath, and the Pentecost was Chislev 21. So the Pentecost this time is Chislev 21. So, you know, Chislev 21, 22, we've gone for 20 to 22. The advantage of that is it's from a definite physical date, right? It's not from a scripturally calculated date. There was a fire on Mount Carmel in 2010. It was the first fire sign of 1 Kings 18 for this time period. And 12 years after that, which is stipulated by 12 stones, according to the number of the tribes of the sons of the tribe, of the tribes of the sons of Israel, which is 12 times, a repeated 12 times is 12 years dead, or 12 months dead. It can't be 12 months dead. There was no fulfillment a year later. There wasn't any fulfillment 2011 to Chislev 21. It must be 2022 Chislev 21. Either that or it's 12 years of years, in which case it's not going to occur for another 5,000 years or something. A bit less, 4,320 years or something. So, yeah, 12 years time. So that nailed it for me. When I saw that, I thought, you've got it. That's when the fire sign is. And now the other scripture that, well, there's several of them, but there's a whole book of them in fact. But one that's relevant here is Acts 2, which says that you will see signs on the earth below and in the heavens above, which means that you're in mid-heaven, you're in the ark, and it's go up, look in the direction of the sea. So actually the Laodiceans, who are Abrahamic, go up before. You see, Jesus becomes Caesar to the Laodiceans, Heshvan 5, so they can be resurrected into the ark. He can't rapture people into the ark until he's Caesar. Once he's Caesar, he can take you. So he's Caesar to them, Heshvan 5 this year, and he raptures them Heshvan 15 to 19. He's Caesar to us, Chislev 5, and he raptures us, Chislev 15 to 21. So we only see the third fire sign from the ark, but the Laodiceans, who are Abrahamic, see the second and the third, and by then they're my attendant, the pair of them, the Lord's witnesses and the Laodiceans, who, when they come into the church, do not get a 4EC baptism. They're a dry land. They become Hebron when they join this church, which is the inheritance of Caleb, the greater Caleb, who is the angel of Laodicea, I believe. So they will see it from the ark. So the point is that the fire sign we have to be in the ark before the third fire sign occurs. And the scripture says that Jesus is coming on the clouds. And the way he comes to us first is he brings us to him. I mean, there's two ways a man can come to you. He can either walk towards you, or he can magnetically pull you towards him. It's the same difference. So Jesus comes to us by bringing us to him, actually. And he comes in the clouds, so there's a fire sign at that time. So that's the second proof, which to me is totally convincing. But the third proof is pretty good too, which is that there's a sentence count. It's pretty good if you like maths. There's a sentence count on 1 Kings 18, 21 to 24, and it counts as 14 times 450 plus 31. It's the definition of the contest when Elijah says, there are 450 prophets of Baal and I'm left by myself. There's a direct comparison of one prophet of Jehovah, as a prophet of Jehovah, he says. One prophet of Jehovah to 450 prophets of Baal. Then he says, let them provide 2 bulls. That's 2 times 450. And let them, dress their bull. That's another 450. And he carries on like this. And you end up with 14 lots of 450, which is everything that the prophets of Baal have to do, and 31 other actions taken by either God or the people or Elijah. And the whole thing adds up to 6,331. Now that might be 5 days out. It might be 10 days out at the most. It is not 450 days out, because this thing is going to happen in the next few months. So if you count all that up, 6,331 days from the beginning of the contest, and the Watchtower became prophets of Baal when they became a false church. But prior to that they were prophets of Jehovah, but once they're a false church you no longer work for Jehovah, you work for Baal, who is the leaders of the church. It means master, basically. So they work for the governing body. They just become a commercial enterprise with no link to God at all, other than their faith and their previous understandings, But God doesn't work through them anymore. I don't know if that's true, actually. I shouldn't say that. I wouldn't want to restrict what the Holy Spirit can do. But their baptism no longer works. I mean, it doesn't work at all. It doesn't even get you into the first Abrahamic covenant. I mean, all churches, according to Daniel 12, lose their water baptism, and then times and a half later they end as a true church. It's the river with 2 banks. So a church begins with a bank, which is when you get a 1AC baptism but not a water baptism. Then you get the river when you get the water baptism. Then the river ends, which is when your water baptism is ended because you've screwed up, and then you get normally a 3.5 year, or can be 4.5 year bank at the other end when you're still a true church but you can't water baptize. And during that time, when you baptize people, they go into the 1AC rather than the ICC, which is the water baptism is a sub-covenant of. So you become a constructive son of Abraham rather than a constructive son of Isaac. In other words, you become a constructive citizen of the kingdom rather than a constructive priest of the kingdom. So the end of the final bank of the Watchtower was 2005 ER14. We know that's a true date because I sent a letter on 2006 ER1, it's a real date, starting off our involvement in the contest of 1 Kings 18. And Elijah says to the 450 prophets of Baal, you go first because you're the majority. And there were 100 prophets of Jehovah, and there was Elijah and his attendant and Obadiah. So there's 103 on Jehovah's side, and there's 450 on the prophets of Baal's side. And the one has a majority of 347 over the other. And if you take 347 days before I wrote that letter on ER the 1st, 2006, you get to 2005 ER14. It's a date we actually already had for the fall of the Watchtower because they failed to celebrate the memorial properly, the Passover, and the late Passover date, the last opportunity to celebrate the Passover properly, is ER14. So that's when they fell. So you count 6,331 days from that, you get to Chislev 15. That is when I and the apostles of this church are raptured into the ark, ending my contest activities. So that's a pretty strong proof. I mean, either if that's wrong, it's wrong by a few days, or it's wrong by 450 days, which is 1.25 years, which screws everything up. So it's at most wrong by a few days. But actually everybody who ever entered into the ark goes in on the 15th of the month, or begins to go in on the 15th of the month if they're a group. So it's not wrong. That's correct, I believe. The next proof is contest noon, because in this 1 Kings 18 contest there's a noon, which leads you to believe there's a symmetry between a morning and an afternoon. Obviously the contest day started 2005 ER14. Noon in Hebrew means, the word means double light. And double light, since there were two true churches after the watchtower fell, one was Laodicea, the other was us, double light is a period when both of us are shining. And we both died to Adam and got resurrected to Abraham. In 2012, Sivan 14, we were reinstalled to feed Ab 5, the Zoe of Pentecost. Laodicea was reinstalled on Tishri 5. They couldn't be installed on Elul 5 because it was a Sabbath day. So they were installed on Tishri 5. So that began the double light. And then double light ended when we died to Abraham on Tammuz 14 and got resurrected to Isaac on Tammuz 16. So the whole period of noon is from 2012 Tishri 5 to 2015 Tammuz 14. And there's 2,661 days from the start of the contest, 2005 ER 14, to the beginning of noon, 2012 Tishri 5. So you add another 2,661 days to the end of noon, which is 2015 Tammuz 14, and you get 2022 Chislev 5, the second fire sign. So that's cool. Now we come to this one, which is really unspeakably fantastic in my totally biased but not inexperienced opinion, which is an interpretation of Daniel 12, oh, 12 is it? Alright, Daniel 12:12, which says, oh, the happinesses, plural, or blessings, plural, of the one keeping in expectation, and who reaches to the 1335 days. And what people don't understand is that there's two things going on here. He keeps in expectation for 1335 days, and he reaches the end of 1335 days. When you count the greater meaning of that, there's two lots of 1335 days. Happy is the guy who waits for 1335 days and reaches the end of the 1335 days, during which he's been waiting. I mean, the one is an inevitable consequence of the other, but it doesn't matter, it's stated twice. So it counts as 2, 6, 70 days. But then it says, oh, the happiness is blessings of that guy. Now, it is a Chaldee plural, which counts as 3 times, because it has a dual number, the Chaldee. So dual is 2, singular is 1, and plural is 3. Now, it's always in the plural, and it just means, oh, the happiness of. So you could count that as 1 times, because it's a bit like a royal we, it's just a polite plural or an emphatic plural. Nonetheless, it's in the plural, and it's a grammatical code. So you can count it as 3 times. So if you do that, then it's 3 times 2 times 1335 days. And that is 3 times 2, 670 days, which is 8,010 days. Now, I started this church by baptising the second Lord's witness, Tony, on Elul the 16th, 2000. Elul the 16th is 616 day, the 16th day of the 6th month. It's also the day I was born in 1957 and the day that I baptised the founder of Laodicea in 2002. It's also the last day of the 12th crop of the end of this church. So the church began on Elul the 16th, 2000, and it ends on Elul the 16th, actually it ends on Elul the 14th, but the resurrection of those guys is Elul the 16th, 2023. And it's 616 is everywhere, to do with Revelation. And so you count from when were we keeping in expectation from? Well, when we formed the church, right? That's when there was more than one person in expectation. And once I formed a church, you expect something to happen with it. We're still expecting, we're still in expectation. And you count your 8,010 days from when I baptised Tony, which started this church, Elul 16. And you get, would you believe, to Chislev 16 actually. And if you count to 2022, the same date we got for when I get raptured. Or Chislev 15 if you count it inclusively. Now what the scripture actually says is, which I didn't quote here, which is a bit silly, it's only my notes. In verse 13 it says, you will rest, but you will stand up for your lot at the end of the days. Now, when you get into the ark, that's God's rest. You rest from having Satan as Caesar in the ark. Satan is not Caesar, Jesus is Caesar, so that's a rest. You've entered into the Sabbath of God, the kingdom of God in the ark. Kingdom of God starts in the ark. And not only that, I will stand up for my lot. Stand up by being raptured up into the ark. And it says you will slip, yes, that's right, resting. And my lot is, in the ark, I begin to get my lot in the kingdom of God, which is the head of the two NCs, which is the king of the two NC kings. That's going to be some burden. So there it is. That's a really powerful meaning of Daniel 12:12. It's 22 1/4 years, which is 8,010 days, from the start of this church, when I baptised the second Lord's witness, to the rapture of this church, when we enter into God's rest and I stand up for my lot. And when it's the entire church stands up for our lot, actually, because the church is my body because they have my baptism. And it's my body because they're in the same spirit covenant as me, which I am the mediator of. The second new covenant, that is. There's more than one, you know. Now the sixth proof is the Gentile times itself, which we've already covered. But it ends on 2022 Tishri 15, begins on 607 Tishri 15, which was the first agricultural year after Josiah was killed by Pharaoh Necho, and Necho started taxing the Jews, and they paid taxes to their new Caesar, which was Necho. God ceased to be Caesar, and his vassal king of Josiah was dead. So it began 607 Tishri 15. It would have ended 1914 Tishri 14 when Russell quite legitimately thought it did. But he didn't understand the 98-year Maccabean gap of Dr. Stephen E. Jones, readjusted by me, and he didn't understand the 10-year gap that I came up with of Jehoiachin in Babylon, when the throne of Jehoiachin was raised above all the other thrones, which means that you're not under a Gentile times anymore. So that takes it to 2022 Tishri 15. And Jesus can't rapture you until he is your Caesar. And he becomes Caesar at a Zoa Pentecost, because we're a Zoa church, and he becomes Caesar to non-Adamic people, and Zoa is a church of non-Adamic people. So the first Zoa Pentecost after Tishri 15 is Heshvan 5, which is the fifth Zoa Pentecost. That Zoa Pentecost he becomes Caesar to Abraham, and he can rapture them on Heshvan 15 in order to see the far signs, which must happen after Heshvan 15. And then he raptures us from Chislev 15. Then he becomes Caesar to Isaac, non-Adamic Isaac, on Chislev 5, and he can rapture us Chislev 15. Everybody begins to be raptured or is raptured on Chislev 15. And so we can see not the second fire sign but the third fire sign from the ark. Mike, who's one of the apostles of this church, had a dream that essentially he saw a fire sign from an ark. So we know that one of them gets seen by the apostles of this church. So this would fulfill Mike's dream. And so here's now the final proof for today, the seventh proof of the two fire signs. And it works like this. As we discussed either in this talk or in an earlier talk, the 42-month lease of the dragon, it runs from 2018 Adar 20 to 2022 Elul 14. And one of the reasons, as I said, it expires in Elul 14 is that the kingdom of God is appointed in Elul 16, and Jesus is appointed as Caesar to Abraham on that date in order that he can be installed on Heshvan 5, the first Pentecost after the Gentile times. In other words, Gentile times ending Tishri 15 means Pentecost, where Jesus is installed, must be Heshvan 5, means first fruits, where he's appointed, must be Elul 16, means Passover, before which that first fruits is related to, is the first fruits fall, must be Elul 14, means the dragon's lease must expire Elul 14. So you then count back the 42 months, and the lease starts at the first fruits, which is Adar 20 in 2018. That's one NC first fruit, a weekly Sabbath first fruits. And then you add the 1,000-day chain of Revelation 20. It's a 1,000-year chain, but you take a day for a year. And Satan is bound by that chain until 2021 Chislev 30. That is when he's let off the chain. That is when the beasts, his beasties, begin. And the sea beasts of Revelation 13, which being a sea beast is more of a commercial outfit than it is a political one. It's the power in companies rather than governments. Anyway, that beast got power. It has it for 10 horns, which are 10 months. And the 10 horns have one thought. Also, they get authority as kings for 1 hour along with the beast. And the 10 compared with the 1 gives the witness the 10 times. And the 10 horns who are 10 kings means there's 10 of them. And you're told that twice. So again, it's the immediate number repetition principle. I mean, okay, 10 kings are not 10 horns, except they are. They're defined as 10 horns. And the one thing you know about 10 kings is even if they aren't horns, which they are, there's 10 of them. So you know that there's 10 horns and you know that there's 10 horns. So it's 10 times precisely. So the 10 horns, the power, this beast has power from when it's let off the chain, 2021 Chislev 30, to 300 days later, 10 months, which is Tishri 30, 2022. Then, on top of the horns, in other words, after the horns, above them, are 10 diadems, which is when it has kingship. And they stand for 10 months, but not accurate to the day. And they count from Tishri 30, 2022, to the end of the rulership of the beast when it's caught. It's caught on 2023 Ab 6. So, there's a chronology. But the beast has 7 heads, and the 7 heads end on Ab 6, so they begin in Tebeth. But we know from Daniel chapter 3 that the fiery furnace of World War III lasts for 7 times, 7 months, which are the 7 heads. And one of the heads is slaughtered, and 7 compared with 1 is 7 times. So the 7 heads last for 7 times, which is the length of World War III. And the headship, therefore, runs from Tebeth 6, 2022 to Ab 6, 2023. And we know that the World War begins as a result of the fire signs. So the fire signs must precede Tebeth 6. And we have them on Chislev 5 and Chislev 21, which is 15 days before Tebeth 6. And Tebeth 6 is the ride of the second horseman of the apocalypse, who is an interesting character. And then are my 7 proofs that the fire signs occur at the 5th or so of Pentecost on Chislev 5, or plus or minus a day, which is December 1 to 4 this year, and on the 2NC Pentecost of the Heshvan 1 year, which is Chislev 20 to 22, which is December 17 to 20. In fact, what happens is you get those 2 fire signs in December, then the Great Tribulation begins of Matthew 24 on Chislev 26, which is December 23-24. Then peace and security is declared of 1 Thessalonians 5:3 on Chislev 27, 9 days before World War III breaks out, which is Christmas Eve. Christmas, peace and security is declared. And then 9 days after that, World War III breaks out on January 2-3, which is Tebeth 6. So World War III breaks out in the new year. Worries about nuclear insecurity resulting from World War III, that's what the Great Tribulation is all about. The Great Tribulation ends at the end of World War III, when there are no more worries about nuclear war or any type of war, because World War III is the last war that mankind ever fights. Because after that we shall beat our swords into plowshares, and we shall be in a hurry to do it. Because we never should really have had to have fought World War III, because it should be obvious even now that our weaponry is too powerful. And, you know, what's happening in Ukraine shows it. The new method of warfare is you destroy the infrastructure and all the buildings in a city, and then you send in your troops hoping everybody's dead. It's a war against civilians mainly. It's absolutely despicable the way that war is carried out. Everything is collateral damage. You know, it's horrendous. What should happen in the old days is the soldiers would go away from the city to a battlefield. I mean, even Cain said to his brother, come into a field. He didn't kill him in his house. He didn't flatten his house first. That's what they used to go to a battlefield, and then the men would fight the men in the field, and you know there'd be some casualties, and a decision would be made. Now what happens is, you first of all destroy the blooming city and kill all the women and children. Then you decide, maybe I'll attack it because I'll lose less troops, and then you do attack it, and then you know you've got a huge amount of casualty before the battle even begins. In other words, war has become a totally criminal endeavour. You should not, it must be a war crime to destroy a city before you invade it, flatten it with everybody in it, and then to cut off the power supply of everybody, try and this is a genocide. You can't survive in a modern world without power. It's very difficult. It's despicable what's going on. I mean, that's just Ukraine, but any war, it's the same thing. I mean, when we did the shock and awe in Iraq and bombing into oblivion Afghanistan, it's the same thing. You can't do this. You can't. If you want to have a war, soldiers should be fighting soldiers. You shouldn't be flattening civilians. That's not. That must be a war. I don't know whether it is or it isn't, but it should be. Anyway, we have to learn that lesson, and God is going to make sure that we do learn it, because we don't have a future until we stop doing things that can destroy our future. So that's it. I hope that was some use. If you want to see the detail of those proofs, have a look at truebiblecode.com, and it's understanding 271-11.html. And that has all of our chronology. It's better laid out now, so you've got some chance of understanding it. And you may think, you will think, that it's a waste of your time and brain power to try and understand it. It would be better to wait till the Lord's witnesses get it right, if they ever do, and then make the attempt to understand it. You'd be totally wrong. If you wait for a sign, you show no faith. What you should do, my advice would be, my honest advice to all sincere Christians, is study the page, make the effort to study it, because this church is the only church which has a shot at decoding the Bible fully. If you don't relate to it, then find a better decoding of the Bible, because it's in a code. Everything God does is in a code. DNA is a code. The fundamental equations of the universe, the grand unifying theory, it's all coded. It's all. There are laws and codes, and the Bible says it's in a code. Have a read of the code page, which is truebiblecode.com/code.html. Have a look at the code page. It proves the Bible's in a code. You know, we may not, and we don't have the code dead accurate. Otherwise, I would have immediately got the fire sign dates at my first attempt, rather than now I'm at the 700th. But we've been slowly iterating. You know, when you walk, you get to your destination not in one step, but in hundreds or thousands of steps. You're supposed to do actually 8,000 to 10,000 paces a day. Well, I've done 700 so far, or thereabouts, to get to this point. And I would ask you, if you love God, every page in his book, the Bible, because of the seemingly daft way in which it's written, where it repeats itself, gives you irrelevant detail, misses out major detail, is written in a convoluted, repetitive way, a strange way, not like a typical history book of the time written as, you know, by Josephus or Julius Caesar, which would read like a normal history book today. It's written in a weird way, and it's written in that way to ask you this question. God is asking you, when you read his book, do you think I'm an idiot? Yes or no? And everybody answers that question, yes, I think you're an idiot. There is no greater meaning to this nonsense. It's just a weird way that God writes. It isn't. He's trying to say 2 or 3 or 4 things in one set of words. He's a brilliant linguistics guy. He's fantastic at logic. He's great cryptic. We don't see all the cryptic stuff, but people who are good at crosswords, it's full of cryptic clues, and it's full of mathematics. I hesitate to say this, but it's like a sort of really serious version of Countdown. I probably should not have said that. But anyway, people normally love puzzles. It's the ultimate puzzle. And I may have everything wrong, I don't think I do, but what I do think I show is it's a puzzle. So what I'm saying is, read my attempt to decode it, and if you don't accept it, don't give up. Come up with a better way of decoding it, and tell me what it is, or tell somebody what it is, or put it on the net, or whatever you want to do. But I'm in favour of communication. So if I'll be happy to, if you think you've got a better code, please send it to us. But that's what Mary did. She sat at Jesus' feet. This is the Church of Mary. Decode his book. That is the job for this time. That is the first law. You can't serve God with your whole heart, soul, mind and strength if you don't know what he's asking you to do or what his plans for the future are. And neither can you give food at the proper time as a true church if you don't know what the time is and you don't have a watch. So it's so important. I know it seems like it's a zero credibility task, which is a completely pointless waste of your time. That is a deception. It isn't. It's the most important use of your time you can possibly make. And I started this, my decoding, but I wasn't the first. I mean, Isaac Newton spent a lot of his life trying to decode it. And Philo came up with most of the principles we follow. Philo was a contemporary of Jesus, Philo of Alexandria. So this stuff has been done and given up on and done and given up on lots of times. But this is the time when it's decoded, where once you get to the time of the end, Daniel can be unsealed, and the time of the end begins in 5 days' time, I think. And we basically have unsealed Daniel. I'm not telling you everything we know. We know more, but I can't tell you it yet. But what I can tell you is this thing's in a code, because God isn't an idiot. Every single word, every tense of every word, every number of every word, I mean, singular, plural, dual, all these things are in there for a reason. He is as good with linguistics as he is with genetic code. And the Bible is as complicated as your DNA because it has the same author. This is God's linguistic poetry. DNA is his biological poetry, and theoretical physics and mathematics is his heavenly poetry. It's the same poet, it's just as good, the poetry. The whole of Shakespeare, which is the most eloquent of human writers, all the metaphor was from the Bible, which he studied extensively. All of British people learnt to speak English from reading the Bible in English. That's why they learnt to read, so they could read the Bible. I'm saying to you, read it and understand not just the basic moral message, which do understand that, it's a really good message, but there's more. It has the whole plan of the future of mankind and how to run a church, and probably the most important thing it has is sustainable morality. The one thing that every government of this world, which is sincere, wants to achieve is a set of laws that stops us wiping ourselves out. Well, God has written those laws in the Bible, and they're there for you to see and understand. But it requires a good understanding of how God thinks, and it requires a bit of decoding to get there. It's not a waste of time. At the beginning when I did it because I could see it was in code. I'm a mathematician. I could see the code. I never knew how well I'd decode it, but I did know that if I kept on knocking and asking, I'd be answered. So I kept on knocking and asking, and I was answered. I mean, I can't easily prove it's in a code with results, because most of the code relates to a church which has chosen to be hidden. And that's probably because there is a time for God to release that. But that's my problem, it's not your problem. You don't need me to prove anything. You shouldn't need a sign. Understand that God is as brilliant at writing the Bible as he was at writing your DNA and writing the laws of physics, which NASA proved and Elon Musk has since proved work. They work, or they would have missed the moon by miles. And Mars. And we also know that there's been some fantastic genetic cures of people using viruses and DNA. There's a certain eye condition that's cured by it, and you can cure sickle cell using viruses and DNA. It's fantastic what we're now able to do with DNA, and it's going to get better because this mad German guy has worked out the 6 transcription factors that determine what every cell is. So he will be able to basically grow human cells to order, and when you can do that, you can fix every busted part in the human body, which is something else. Alright, so I don't know, I spent 30 years doing this, and to blow my own trumpet, I was a maths scholar at Cambridge. I won my college maths prize there. I got a first, didn't get a double first, and I was 20th in the national maths competition at school without being in the maths stream. I was in the science stream, but I came 20th. So I'm very good at abstract maths, and I saw this is in the code, and I know that experts these days, especially government experts, are not held in the highest regard, thanks to the antics of Imperial College, which I have to say, unfortunately, I also went to. So that shot all my credibility to pieces. But with my expertise, whatever credibility you wish to give it, this book is in a code. And it's not the code of Eli Rips and Michael Drosnin. It is the code of Jesus' parables. It was symbolic, and he explained them only to his disciples. He did not explain them to the whole people. And if you are one of his disciples, you will want them explained to you. Well, this website, True Bible Code, has those explanations, some of them. And if you can help us and improve our explanations, we will be very, very grateful. And if you can get your head round those explanations, you will be obeying the first law of God. And that's what I pray that you end up doing, all you people who wish to serve him. Because all of the brilliance of his plan, or nearly all of it, has been hidden from you. You don't know what death is. You don't know what your future is. You don't know how Jesus ransomed us. You don't know what baptism is. You do know that there's a salvation from Jesus Christ. You don't know how it works. And all the power, all the detail, you don't have, because the detail is encoded. So may God bless your attempts to serve him. Amen.